Hello guys, welcome back to another video on my channel. If you're new to my channel, please subscribe, like my video, check out all my other content after you watch this video, and leave all your suggestions and comments in the section below. We are around 47 days away from election day. Today is September 19, 2024, and election day is going to be November 5th, 2024. So we are very close. We are around a month and a half away, and this race has become very tight and close between former President Donald Trump and current Vice President Kamala Harris. Joe Biden had dropped out of the race prior this summer, and Kamala Harris has taken over that as the leader of the Democratic Party and as the front runner and official candidate to run against former President Donald Trump. He is running for a third term. He had became president in 2016 when he beat Hillary Clinton. In 2020, he lost to current President Joe Biden, and now he is facing off against Vice President Kamala Harris. And this is a very tight race, and this is a race that is probably much tighter in all the polls and numbers than previous races. In 2016, it was predicted that Hillary Clinton would have a fairly easy shot, easy way to win. Nobody really had said that Donald Trump would win, and he ended up having probably one of the biggest surprises in modern political history. In 2020, it was a lot more lopsided. Joe Biden was predicted to win by pretty large margins. The polls had him up by a very historic amount. We can see here back in 2020, he was supposed to win the popular vote by around 8, according to 538. He ended up still winning the election by 4.5% on the national scale, and he ended up winning the Electoral College with around 306 electoral votes to 232. The states that put him over the top were a lot more narrow than had been expected, and this race was very tight nonetheless. So that leads us to 2024 now, and it leads us with a map that is going to look fairly similar to the maps that we are used to. It's going to be the states of Arizona, Nevada, Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan that will decide the winner of this election. Every other state, we all kind of know what it's going to go for, whose side it's going to go. Obviously, some states will be leaving and exiting that swing state column. The state of Florida will no longer be considered the ideal swing state. Texas, it won't be considered that this time around. Same thing with Ohio and Iowa. The nation as a whole is predicted to shift a few points at least to the right, according to national polls. So these states would not even be considered in that margin of error, for the chance that, for example, Kamala Harris could win. I do predict that this election will be at least 2 points to the right, and the polls right now have it at around a tight race. Kamala Harris is up 1.9% right now on Real Clear Politics. Biden was up in the same time in history by 6.5. So the nation, according to the polls, has shifted around 3 to 4 points to the right. And if that's the case, then she'll probably win by what I expect her to win by. I think right now Kamala Harris will win the popular vote by around 1. And that right now indicates a most likely chance of a Trump win. This is a graph and a statistic made by Nate Silver, who is the same guy who created 538, the most used website probably for political analysis. And he is the creator of that website, and he also created this. And this is basically the chances of the Electoral College win by the popular vote margin. And as we can see here, it is very skewed towards Republicans. And right now, if my prediction and the polls predictions are right, where Kamala Harris is going to win around in that 0 to 1 range, maybe 0 to 2, then Trump has a 60 to 85% chance of winning the Electoral College vote. And this is what I mean by this margin right here is not good for Kamala Harris, given how bad it was previously. Same thing with 538 over here, where she's up right now by 2.9%. And in 2020, 538 got Joe Biden's margin off by around 4 points. Putting that margin in the race today, it would come out to a Trump popular vote win. And I do not think it's going to be that far off from what it actually is. I think the margins in 2020 were probably the worst we're ever going to see in the long future, but I do still think that they are, once again, underestimating Donald Trump. By how much, I don't really know. Right now, they have her up by 2.9. Even if she won it by in that range, she would only have a 69% chance to win, which is not good enough knowing how inaccurate these are. I think these electoral margins are pretty beneficial for Republicans. And if she's going to win from D plus 0 to D plus 2, she's only going to have around a 15, 30, max 40% chance of winning the election and the electoral college itself. But either way, let's get to this map now. And a lot of stuff has happened. Donald Trump has had a second attempted assassination, and I don't think it's going to change much at all. It's not really covered as much as the previous one was. We had a few other events, small events, very minor events. We had a lot of polls that came in, some good for Kamala Harris, some good for Donald Trump. We did have a poll out of New York that I want to touch upon very briefly that just came out by a pollster that usually overestimates Democrats, Siena College. This is our pretty much standard poll for the state of New York, and the latest poll has her up by 12 and 13, which is just around the same margin as their last poll at the end of July and beginning of August. So it means that the state of New York could be this close. I mean, them having her up only 12 and 13 spells a lot of trouble, given the fact that their final poll in the 2020 election had Biden up by 32, and he ended up winning it by 23. So that's something to look out for in the state of New York. Some new data that we do have in that state, and one that would be crucial to the popular vote. But either way, states like New York and all these states up in the Northeast will still be safe for her. I do still think she's going to win all these states and the first district of Maine by 12 percentage points or over. But as I said before, New York will be a lot closer than last time around. Same thing with New Jersey, where we haven't had polling with Trump versus Harris. The Trump versus Biden polls had Biden doing absolutely horrible in the state. And since New Jersey and New York are probably going to shift in that same direction, I expect the state of New Jersey to also fall to probably closer to 2016 margins. I think even closer, where it's going to be on that border with being lean. Harris will also pick up the state of Illinois in that safe margin. She'll win that by over 12 percentage points. She'll pick up the states of California, Oregon, and Washington, as well as the state of Hawaii, also by safe margins. None of these states will be that close. I do expect the state of Oregon to fall closer to those 2016 margins, but we do not have enough evidence right now to put it under that 12-point margin, so we're going to keep it in that safe column. So she'll start out with 181 electoral votes. Donald Trump will have an easy time winning all of these states by a safe margin. That includes all of these very rural states up in the middle of the country. And then we have the traditional Bible Belt in the South. All these states are going to go to him by safe margins. The states of Ohio and Iowa will be included for the first time in a really, really long time, where these states are predicted to be in that safe margin. They went for Trump by 8 points in 2016 and 2020. Similar story with Iowa, 9 points and 8 points, which means they shifted right relative to the country. And since the nation as a whole is going to shift to the right by upwards of 4 points, that means that these two states will end up being over that 12-point margin. We do have a little bit of polling out of these two states. Not much polling because they are not really contested. But right now, once again, Donald Trump leads some polls by over safe margin, some polls by in the higher digits. And we got to remember, polls in Ohio and Iowa are super bad. Trump was only supposed to win it by a point. He ended up winning it by 8. So just keep that in mind when looking at polls in a lot of these Rust Belt states. And these states will stay in that safe column. Also, Maine's 2nd district, a very right-trending rural district, one that Barack Obama won with ease and that Donald Trump flipped very heavily in 2016 and 2020. One that is going to stay with him. I think he'll expand his margins, probably win it by around 12 points. And that'll be all the safe states. And that starts by Harris up at 181 and Trump at 149. Likely states, Kamala Harris will win Colorado and New Mexico by between 6 and 12. Colorado will be on that higher end, closer to 12. New Mexico will be on that lower end, closer to 6. And the reasoning behind that is because New Mexico is a lot more Hispanic. It is actually the only majority Hispanic state, and Hispanics are trending to the right as compared to the country, and especially Hispanic Hispanics in states like New Mexico, Texas, and Florida are trending heavily towards Republicans over the past 6 to 8 years. And this means that the state of New Mexico will trend to the right, not by too much, but by just enough to put it just under that likely margin. The state of Colorado is the complete opposite, going from Clinton +5 to Clinton +13.5. It'll still trend right as compared to the nation, probably at around a 10 to 12 point win for Harris. This is the most left trending state in the country, and I expect it to stay maybe closer to those double-digit margins for the current vice president. Donald Trump will also have a few likely states in his column. The state of Texas and Florida will probably vote in similar fashion with each other. Florida is a state that has been going more and more Republican every year in 2020, despite all the metrics and all the polls showing that current President Joe Biden would end up winning the state. It is actually a state that stayed to Donald Trump, did not flip. He was supposed to win it by around 5 points, 4, and then at the end by around 2.5. Trump ended up winning it by around 3.5. Nowadays, the polls are a lot more favorable. Donald Trump is supposed to win the state by a likely margin. I do expect him to overperform these polls and win the state by around 8 to 9 points. Very similar story with the state of Texas. I think those Hispanic trends in the Rio Grande kind of save the state from shifting too much to the left. As we can see, a lot of blue down here. Shifting to 2020, a lot less blue down here. That's what kept the state in Trump's column by around 6 points. These shifts to the left in Tarrant, Dallas, Cullen, and Denton County will be halted for now because Kamala Harris is not a popular candidate, not a good fit for the state of Texas. Also, polls in Texas, however, obviously there haven't been too many taken, but the polls in Texas do have Trump up by likely margins. I do think he's also going to win the state of Texas by 6 to 8 points, also maybe even up to 9 and 10, but right now I'll keep it on that lower end. And the states now that are going to be more closer, these are the states that are between 2 and 6. So these are the lean states. Kamala Harris will have quite a few lean states in her column, and that would include the states of Minnesota, Virginia, New Hampshire, Maine at large, and Nebraska's 2nd district. These will all vote together, probably between 2 and 6 percentage points, and all of them will be shifting to the right by different amounts, but a general similar fashion. I think these states are all very similar. They voted pretty similar in the 2020 election. They all voted by 10, 7, 7, and 9. So all of them between 7 and 10 points. Similar story this time. They're all probably going to vote for Democrats between 3 and 6 points. The state of New Hampshire and Maine might be on that higher end. I think Virginia and Minnesota will be on that middle end. The states of New Hampshire and Maine have been seeing some good polling for Kamala Harris. I do expect those polls to overestimate her by quite a little bit. And in the end of the day, I do expect Kamala Harris to win these also by around 4 to 6 percentage points. Donald Trump will also be having some lean states, and now we have returned to these 7 competitive states. These states here are going to be the closest. Donald Trump, however, will pick up the state of New Hampshire in that lean column. Don't listen to a lot of these polls that are telling you that it's going to be a 0.1 race. It is not going to be a 0.1 race. Donald Trump will end up winning the state by probably around 2. We have polls like Quinnipiac that have her winning by 3. She is not going to win by 3, so don't believe that. I think some of these polls like the TIPP and maybe like Signal are a lot more accurate. Donald Trump is probably going to win by around 1 to 2%. I think he's going to actually win it by over 2. Same thing here. We can see in 538, they have him winning by 0.2. In 2020, they had Biden winning by 1.8. So we can see where those errors might be leading us. And I'm not saying it's going to be the same error, but it definitely favors Donald Trump. Another state that I will be moving now into the lean column is the state of Arizona, where Donald Trump right now is going to win by around 1 point as well. He leads the polls by 1.6, which is exactly the same as his 2016 win. And in 2016, if we remember, he ended up winning the state by 3.5. So that's fairly interesting. On 538, he also leads the state by around 0.5 percentage points, so a little more narrow here. The past polls have had it either as even or a Trump lead, so Kamala Harris has not led in the state of Arizona for quite a while. This is one state where I think Donald Trump will do very well in. He will flip it, and he will win its 11 electoral votes. And we're now left with 5 more states, and all of these states will be decided by that tilt column, so it's going to be 0 to 2 percentage points. Starting with the state of Nevada, I have it right now as tilting in Trump's column. This state has gotten a little bit closer. The polls are dead heat, 0.2 percentage points for Kamala Harris. It has been back and forth. Trump has led, and then she took the lead, and now it is narrowing once again to almost an even race. The latest Hill Emerson poll has it as a tie. I do expect Trump to overperform the polls a little bit as he did in 2020. And he will win the state by around 0.5 to 1 percentage point. And then returning now to the Rust Belt, we're going to have the state of Wisconsin, which I also see Trump overperforming those polls by a huge amount. I think Donald Trump's going to win the state of Wisconsin by around 1 percentage point right now. Let's look at 2016 and 2020. Clinton was supposed to win by 4, and she ended up losing the state by 0.7. And then over here, we see Joe Biden was supposed to win by 7. He ended up winning by 0.6. The state of Wisconsin is infamous for having the worst polling to date. Same thing with the state 538. We can see she was up by larger margins. It has come down now to 1.6, and that is not good for her, given the fact that Joe Biden was supposed to win by a whopping 8.4% in 2020. So her winning by 1.6, it is not good for her at all in those polls, and I think she's going to lose the state by a tilt margin. Similar in the state of Georgia, and Georgia is one of those states where I expected Democrats to do a lot better than what they've been doing now. But once again, it is one of those states that Donald Trump has been pulling away. He has been pulling ahead in the state of Georgia. He now leads by 2, which is almost outside the margin of error. And I do think he's going to end up winning the state by around 1 point. A state that Joe Biden did very well in 2020 because of those suburban, those African-American votes. But as we see now, a pretty common theme in the 2024 election is that Democrats are not getting that same minority vote and turnout that they did get in the 2020 election. And then now moving to the state of Michigan, I do still have Michigan as being tilt in the Democrats column. And in the state of Wisconsin, I do have tilting in Republicans columns. And these are 2 states that are very close in the polls. Pennsylvania right now, Harris is up by 1. The past 4 have had in Trump's favor, while the previous 4 had been in Kamala Harris's favor. This is one state that will probably decide the election, and it is one state that also overestimates Democrats. Biden was supposed to win it by 4. Clinton was supposed to win it by 6.6. And it ended up being a 1-point race on either side in both election cycles. And then my justification for putting Michigan still in that column for Kamala Harris is because of its pretty good margin for Biden in 2020. He won by 2.8. That is the most left state out of all these 7 states. Right now, I do have her winning by a very, very narrow, less than 0.5 margin. And that would complete my map. My updated map right now, Donald Trump is at 297. Kamala Harris is at 241. And that will do it for today's video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe, like my video, put all your comments in the section below, and I will check you guys out in the next one.